Imagine an Olympic marathon where the winner is fueled by rat poison, the runner-up catches a ride in a car, and another competitor stops for a mid-race nap after eating rotten apples. The 1904 St. Louis Olympics was one of the most bizarre events in history, a wild ride of chaos and eccentricity, unmatched in sporting history. When President Teddy Roosevelt decided to host the first U.S. Olympics in 1904, he boldly pulled the event away from Chicago, where it was originally planned to coincide with the St. Louis World's Fair. This decision proved to be disastrous. Fearful of losing attendance, the World's Fair organizers threatened to hold competing sports events. In response, the International Olympic Committee relocated the Games to St. Louis, leaving Chicago unprepared and St. Louis scrambling to organize. The opening ceremony reflected this lack of planning. Only a handful of American athletes and a few foreign competitors were present. Worse yet, the Games stretched from July to November, a staggering 4 months. One defining feature of the 1904 Games was America's overwhelming presence. With travel to St. Louis difficult, Americans made up 526 of the 651 competitors. In fact, 49 of the 94 events had no foreign competitors at all. The results, the US dominated, winning 239 medals. For comparison, Germany in second place earned just 13, while Canada managed only 6. Among the most remarkable competitors was George Iser, a gymnast who had lost a leg in a train accident. Wearing a wooden prosthetic leg, he won 6 medals in a single day, including gold in the parallel bars. His triumph proved that determination defies limitations. While some athletes like Iser overcame immense challenges, others competed in events that now seem almost comical, like tug-of-war. Believe it or not, tug-of-war was part of the 1904 Olympics, with America fielding 4 teams from local athletic clubs. All 4 U.S. teams advanced to the semi-finals. In a twist of fate, Milwaukee defeated New York for the gold, and New York's athletes chose to sit out the silver and bronze matches, allowing St. Louis to win by default. The 1904 Olympic Marathon wasn't just a race. It was a disaster movie waiting to happen. The runners gasped for air, their lungs clogged with dust. One collapsed from dehydration. Another was chased off course by a pack of stray dogs. Meanwhile, a cheetah hitched a ride in a car, and the eventual winner staggered toward the finish line, high on rat poison. Welcome to the most disastrous marathon in Olympic history. This isn't a scene from a bizarre comedy. This is the true story of the 1904 Olympic Marathon, a race so catastrophically mismanaged that it remains legendary for all the wrong reasons. Buckle up, because this is a tale of endurance, madness, and some of the worst decision-making in sports history, and just wait until you see the actual photos. So, stick around to the end for those. It's 1904, and the Olympic Games are being held in St. Louis, Missouri. But these weren't the grand, internationally coordinated games we know today. Overshadowed by the Louisiana Purchase Exposition, aka the World's Fair, the marathon, normally a test of endurance and sportsmanship, became something else entirely. The race was scheduled at 3 p.m. on August 30th under the blazing 90 degrees Fahrenheit Missouri sun, a brutal, near-farcical endurance test that pushed competitors to their limits and well beyond. The 24.85-mile course was a death trap. The race started with a few laps around the stadium and then veered out onto dusty country roads, which were not closed to the public. Runners had to dodge everyday traffic, delivery wagons, railroad trains, and even people out walking their dogs. Automobiles carrying race officials kicked up choking clouds of dust in the runners' faces. To make matters worse, or in the organizers' minds, more scientific, water was almost nowhere to be found. Incredibly, officials provided only 2 water stops for the entire marathon because officials wanted to test the effects of purposeful dehydration on the athletes. It was a recipe for disaster. Heat and dust overwhelmed the competitors. 18 of the 32 runners collapsed or quit mid-race. Spectators lining the course watched in shock and glee as this Olympic marathon turned into a slow-motion train wreck. And as if the treacherous course wasn't enough, the competitors themselves made this marathon one for the history books. Frederick Laws, an American runner with a very creative approach to long-distance racing, more on that soon. Thomas Hicks, another American who would go on to win, but not without scandal. Felix Carvajal, a Cuban mailman who showed up in long pants and dress shoes after hitchhiking to St. Louis. Lentonyane and Jan Mashiani, two Swana tribesmen from South Africa running barefoot. William Garcia, an unfortunate American who almost died during the race. With a cast like this, disaster was inevitable. Out on the course, a mix of drama and dark comedy ensued. The starting pistol fired, and almost immediately the course vanished into a suffocating cloud of dust. Runners gasped for air, their throats clogging with grit. Some coughed so hard they collapsed. A few miles in, William Garcia was found lying by the side of the road, barely conscious. His lungs were so full of dust that he was bleeding internally. Had he not been discovered in time, he might have become the first Olympic athlete to die mid-event. Then there was Felix Carvajal, the Cuban mailman. And he had hitchhiked to St. Louis and arrived at the starting line in a whimsical pirate shirt, dress pants, and street shoes. In fact, after not sleeping or eating for 40 hours and having lost his way and his savings to gambling, he arrived just in time for the marathon. Another runner, perhaps out of sheer pity, helped him cut his pants into makeshift shorts, but he kept the dress shoes. Mid-race, he practiced his English with spectators while running backward. Then, spotting an orchard, he veered off course to snack on some apples. Unfortunately, they were rotten. Doubled over in pain, groaning from stomach cramps. His solution? A quick nap by the side of the road. Despite all of this, he still finished in 4th place. Meanwhile, Lentonyane, one of the South African runners, was making excellent progress. Until he was chased off course by a pack of stray dogs. His unexpected detour cost him valuable time, yet he still managed to finish 9th. And incredibly, the chaos wasn't over yet. Frederick Laws, the car-riding champion. Early on, American runner Fred Laws, a talented athlete struggling in the heat, decided he'd had enough after 9 miles. But instead of quitting, he hitched a ride in a passing car. For 11 miles, he rode in comfort, enjoying the breeze while his fellow runners struggled under the blazing sun. But the car broke down before reaching the stadium, and Laws, now rested, decided to rejoin the race on foot. He trotted into the stadium well ahead of the pack and crossed the finish line first, fooling the crowd. People erupted in cheers. He even posed for photographs with Alice Roosevelt, the president's daughter, as she prepared to crown him champion. At that very moment, astute bystanders and officials caught wind of Laws's vehicular assist. Busted! He was immediately disqualified on the spot. In the same vein of wild triumphs, we have Thomas Hicks, the first American to win the Olympic marathon. His path to victory would make for a thrilling movie. By the final miles, Hicks was barely conscious and begging to quit. Thanks to an outrageous decision by his coaches to keep him going, they fed him a performance booster, a mix of strychnine. Yes, rat poison. That was mixed with raw eggs and brandy. This toxic cocktail, essentially the first known case of Olympic doping, kept him staggering forward. His skin turned grey. He started hallucinating. By the time he stumbled across the finish line, he was so weak that his trainers had to carry him away. Just think about it. After navigating the last leg of the race in a disoriented state, he emerged victorious amidst a crowd that had just witnessed the spectacle unfold. Today, this would result in instant disqualification. In 1904, they declared him the Olympic champion. Out of 32 runners, only 14 finished. Some collapsed, some were carried off, and others simply vanished. The reckless planning, brutal conditions, and sheer absurdity made this one of the most dangerous and ridiculous competitions in Olympic history. If there's one thing this race taught the world, it's how not to organize a marathon. No Olympic race has ever been quite this insane again. The aftermath. Thomas Hicks, USA, the winner on strychnine, never competed in another Olympic marathon. The extreme physical toll nearly killed him and he faded into obscurity. Fred Laws, USA, the cheater who got a second chance. Despite his infamous car ride, he wasn't permanently disgraced. Laws claimed it was all a practical joke. He said he never intended to really accept the gold medal and was just joking by running across the finish. The Amateur Athletic Union banned Laws for life on the spot, only to lift the ban a few months later when Laws pleaded that he had been temporarily insane during his stunt. In 1905, he won the Boston Marathon. Fair and square. Felix Carvajal, Cuba, the crowd favorite. Never achieved long-term athletic success, but remains one of the most unforgettable figures in Olympic history. Upon returning to Cuba, he became a national hero for his tenacity, but he went back to his old male route, living out his days in quiet. No Olympic race has ever been this insane again, and maybe that's for the best. It's captivating to think about how the history of the Olympics has been shaped by the remarkable, the weird, and the curiously human stories that are woven into the fabric of competition. With every bizarre injustice and daring feat, these stories serve as reminders that the spirit of the Olympics is more than just about medals. It's about celebrating the authentic human experience. Thank you for watching. Tell us what you think. And if you enjoyed, learned, or were entertained, please like and subscribe. It sure does help us out a bunch. Thanks again. The real photos are next. The photographs. Proof that resilience knows no limits. Here's the real George Iser, the one-legged gymnast who defied the odds and won 6 Olympic medals in a single day. The beginning of the craziest marathon in Olympic history, these runners had no idea what they were in for. South African runners Len Taunyani and Jan Mashiani racing barefoot in one of the worst planned marathons ever. Respect. Felix Carvajal, the Cuban mailman, casually running a marathon in dress shoes. Fred Laws, moments before getting caught for hitchhiking his way to first place. Thomas Hicks, barely conscious, stumbles across the finish line, pale, poisoned, and carried by his trainers. And yes, he still won.